first flight, man has used the airplane for two purposes: to get him places at incredible speed and to provide him with the greatest of all thrills, the defiance of the law of gravity. Today, in an era of jet planes and world-circling hops, the spirit of the old-time barnstormer, who thrived when flying was a novelty, is far from dead. It exists at every air show, when men still bet their lives on their own coordination and the infallibility of a throbbing machine. It exists at air races, too, where pilots make the same wager and sometimes lose. But for the real flavor of barnstorming, we must turn back to the 1910s and early 1920s. The newsreel cameraman, balancing precariously on old chicken wire and canvas crates, was as much a daredevil as the daredevil himself. In those days, rickety planes, many from World War I, were used for every conceivable kind of stunt. Here, high above Manhattan, one becomes a prize ring. What a place to land a haymaker. Bathing beauties, too, took to the airways. Imagine the present Miss America making a dive like this. In this period of flaming youth, no young lady was more daring than 19-year-old Lillian Boyer. Lillian thought nothing of hanging by her feet. Then, as the wind whipped about her, by a single foot. Up there with the earth thousands of feet below and no parachute, Miss Boyer might decide to do anything. She's hurtling into space. Now it's, look, Mom, no hands, as she hangs by her teeth. One of the most popular tricks in the early movies was the transfer from souped-up car to slowed-down plane. At 70 miles an hour, it wasn't easy. Here's a fellow with a lot of drag. On the Barnstormer's airliner, the lower berth wasn't too comfortable. When a daredevil went for a joyride, his view of the scenery looked like this. Because the cockpit might be stuffy, he often rode the wheels. As the plane lands with the ground rushing up to meet him, the stuntman waits until the last split second before pulling himself to safety. The ancient spirit of daredevilry, reborn with the birth of the plane, seemed to fan out into other fields as well. Balloon riders preferred to go straight up, to perform their acrobatics dangling from the bottom of a gas-filled bag. These five gentlemen chose the quick way down. They use parachutes, but just to prove they're not sissies, they land in the water, heavy gear and all. But everything's under control. They've got one boat to pick them all up. Back in the roaring 20s, daredevils started young. Mildred Unger was 10 years old when she put away her dolls to go joyriding, standing upright on top of a big balloon. On her swaying perch, the little girl headed skyward without even a guy rope to grasp. Californians shuddered as she drifted 2,000 feet above Los Angeles, but Mildred thought the ride was fine. Among the most daring of the daredevils is the inventor. This one has a gadget to make ice skaters rocket-propelled. Ready, set. Here's one idea that really backfired. But try again. Ouch! Now a French genius with a glider he claims can take off from a standing start. Look at the spot he's picked for the test hop. Bon voyage. Believe it or not, he's not hurt a bit. Oh well, back to the old drawing board. A human being can stand only so much wear and tear unless he's one of the indestructible men. Take this Texan who's dragged in a straitjacket behind a car at 40 miles an hour. The idea is to remove the jacket before friction removes the seat of your pants. Some like it cold. New Jersey's Eddie Jameson's right at home when he's inside an ice cake like a frozen herring for hours at a time. Others prefer it hot. The inside of a steel box can seem pretty airless, unless, of course, you're used to riding the subways. This appears to be going a bit too far. Talk about a hot foot. The cover comes off and out bounces the great Marvelo. A little oven-baked, but otherwise just dandy. Here's another character who likes to play with fire. A trick like this one makes some stuntmen feel good, but it makes him feel like the devil. Meet a latter-day Hercules who has his own remedy for breaking up a chest cold. The men really get into the swing of things. Hercules is hopeful that the slab of concrete breaks before he does. Whoops, hold it. Yes, sir, it's sometimes hot work being an indestructible man. Human flies are perfectly destructible, but they don't seem to know it, as they dangle in midair with their heads in the clouds and their feet in a crack on the side of a skyscraper. This gentleman took his morning warm-up on a narrow cornice while performing for war relief in World War I. It's amazing how much pep you have after just a few exercises. Back in 1917, when it was considered patriotic to wear bunting, J.P. Linthicum got so good at scaling buildings that he tried it blindfolded. While the crowd gasped, Linthicum scrambled up the sheer face of a 14-floor structure entirely by his sense of feel. When some human flies get to the top, the thrills are just beginning. Here's a handstand high above Broadway and a stuntman who loses his balance. Daredevil Johnny Reynolds tries a game called teeter-totter. Johnny is 39 years old. With luck, he may someday be 40. There's no trick to jumping rope, unless you decide to do it on a plank sticking out of a 20-story building. What a place to go into your dance. If the anchor man stepped off the end of that board, this act would come to a sudden conclusion. Now the blindfold test. Look out! You've got to have a strong mind to pull a stunt like this. At a dizzy height, this fellow breaks into the movies by walking along a narrow, slippery girder on a pair of stilts. Watch a sudden gust of wind blow off the daredevil's hat and almost blow off the daredevil. In this era of wonderful nonsense, where mountain goats feared to tread, you could always find a stuntman. This is good for the arches, but not the nerves. Every one of us has the fear of falling from high places. That's why, for spectacular thrills, it's hard to beat the human flies. Bridge acrobats prefer to do their work over the water. This Frenchman picks a span rising 200 feet above the Seine. That's 65 feet higher than the Brooklyn Bridge. He goes through his stunts, then slowly as in a nightmare, his feet slip from the trapeze. Mr. Coffee Nerves isn't even jarred. Ho, ho, ho. Another bridge, another jumper. Notice how the acrobat waves his arms to guide his hurtling body. In a dive like this, you've got to land just right to live. Of all the daredevils, the ones that take the biggest risks are the crack-up champions. They'll tackle anything to the tune of crumbling stone, splintering wood, tearing metal, and shattering glass. Locomotives come thundering head-on at full throttle. That's all, brother. That's the top in spills and chill.